Well, I want to turn to your listener questions here. First question comes from Tina in Monroe, Louisiana. She says, Keith, I love your show. Just started listening last month. Tina asks, Keith, I have the idea of buying land and want to know if this is a good idea to build new rentals on, like fourplexes. I've already formed an LLC and hope to open a business line of credit, but this would be my first ever real estate investment. Okay, Tina, thanks for finding the show here. Welcome in. I expect that you'll have years of profitable listening ahead to start a new development from digging raw dirt all the way through to procuring your certificates of occupancy and have that be your very first investment. For almost anyone, I have got to say no, because there is just so much to development. Development is going to rely on your experience and your ability to build a team. You're going to need general contractors and subcontractors and vendors, suppliers, and experience dealing with regulators and a municipality and bankers and perhaps investors and legal. Development is risky for beginners. You're purchasing something that doesn't yet exist. You've got to be sure that you're buying the right land in the right place, and that means studying everything from geotechnical reports and perk tests to understanding the demographics, whether you plan to buy that land there in Monroe, Louisiana, or wherever else it is, and then your exit strategy, and well, it might not actually be to exit, but it's going to be either to sell your completed development or for you to hold it for rental income. You've really got to know what you're doing. I am not a developer, but I talk to a lot of them, especially build-to-rent developers. Now, the reason that I say that the answer is no for development as your first real estate investment for almost anyone, well, I say almost because if you have a remarkable mentor, someone that's going to go out in the field with you almost every day, then it's a possibility. And even then, that mentor should have a proven track record. You need approvals and subdivision and plans drawn and bringing in drainage and utilities and entitlement. I mean, instead of all that, for a beginner, and really even for most veteran investors, it is substantially easier to buy something that's already built, that has a history of rental occupancy and income. And then the team that you have to build is so much smaller with that primary long-term team member as your property manager. But thank you for the question, Tina, because I think a lot of real estate investors wonder about building themselves from raw land. And it seems that even more investors write in here wondering about, just building one individual single-family rental home or duplex or fourplex. And even then, if it's successfully done, it usually takes longer than you think. And then once you're done, the property is vacant and you need to find tenants. So it might be a few more months before it even cash flows. So buy property that's already built. Learn investing that way. And what you've done is you've outsourced all of the development unknowns to someone else, and they bring you the known and completed development project. That is better for more than 99% of people. And then look into being a developer yourself when you've got sufficient experience, if that remains interesting to you. A great mentor with a proven track record, or both. Hey, if you'd like to ask a question and potentially have me answer it on air here, again, go ahead and reach out through getricheducation.com/contact, because that's where you can either leave a voice message or a written one. I am just getting started with listener questions. This is Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. The next question comes from Adam. He is a real estate agent in Seattle, and Adam asks this. Hi, Keith. I've been an avid listener and follower of yours for years now. Like you, the Little Purple Book changed my life early on, and I was able to semi-retire at age 35. The book that he's talking about, by the way, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I am 42 now and back working as a realtor because I love it. And then after he wrote, I love it, in parentheses, he put, well, sorta. So I don't know that he loves it too much. And I am at a crossroad in my life. Do I keep acquiring more property and more debt, or do I start paying down the properties I do have? I have 7 properties now, and with a mindset of less is more, as I want to enjoy my life a bit more, and I'm honestly getting tired of managing my 3 in-state properties. Therefore, I've been thinking about selling one to pay off the loan of 2 other properties and really start to downsize and truly be debt-free. Life is too short and I want to enjoy the rest of my life. Do you have any advice or opinions for me? Thank you in advance. Okay, Adam, well, since you've listened for years, you probably already understand that I don't pay off any of my properties, though I could. I don't want to. I'd lose leverage and all that. You probably understand that I don't self-manage. You said that you self-manage 3 of your 7 properties there in Washington State. So since you probably already understand all that, yes, I would acquire more property, more debt, and outsource the property management. That way you can enjoy life. If the properties in your home state don't have high rents in proportion to their values, in a lot of places around Seattle, they don't have a high ratio there, well, then it's probably worth 1031ing into out-of-state property. Or if you really like those Washington properties, then find a property manager there in-state. And to find a suitable 1031 exchange facilitator with a proven track record, check the resources tab at gremarketplace.com. That same website will help you find out-of-state properties. If you like, you can also contact our coaches to help walk you through that at gremarketplace.com/coach. That is a free coaching service, by the way. Now, as far as keeping the in-state Washington properties, if you decide that you do want to do that, the Bigger Pockets forums can help you vet a qualified property manager there. Now, Adam, you did say something about the possibility of downsizing and becoming truly debt-free, as you put it. But my question is, what's the problem with debt if someone else reliably pays it all for you? Of course, your tenant pays a principal and interest, and hopefully a little on top of that, called cash flow. All right, in that case, all of that debt is outsourced. Now, let me get a little philosophical for a minute. I don't know the name of the person that's the biggest debtor in the entire world, but you know what? He is probably really wealthy, or she. I'll circle back to why in a second. Here's a fun way to understand this. The quarterback that threw the most interceptions of all time, you must think that guy is a total loser. Well, you know what? The quarterback that's thrown the most interceptions all time by far is in fact a Hall of Famer, Brett Favre. Oh, well, how can that be? Well, it's because he got so many chances to play. He must have been a pretty good quarterback for the coach to put him on the field that often, year after year. The baseball pitcher that lost the most ever games for his team all time, he is named Cy Young. Well, Cy Young also won the most games all time in Major League Baseball. He was one of the very first inductees into the Hall of Fame, and there's even an award given each year still to the most outstanding Major League Baseball player called the Cy Young Award. Yet he lost the most games. And say that you meet a guy on the street there where you live and you learn that he has $20 million in debt. I don't even need to know anything else. Right there, that tells me that he's probably a financial winner to have that much debt. Because see, he would need to be highly creditworthy to even get all that debt in the first place. See, we're only looking at the $20 million debt side of his balance sheet. His asset side might be $50 million. Hey, that's a $30 million net worth. Even with high inflation, $30 million is fairly wealthy today. And Meta's Mark Zuckerberg is one of the wealthiest people in the world. He has a net worth north of $100 billion. And the Zuckerbergs, they took a loan for their home, even though they could pay cash for it many times over. And yet, when Zuckerberg and his wife bought their home, they took out a loan for the leverage and the arbitrage. The wealthiest people in the world have the most debt. I model that, you can model that. I personally look to increase my debt as time goes on, and then simultaneously, I expect the asset side to increase faster than the debt side. The asset side increases faster because I've got the debt hence the leverage. So this is why I have an aversion to being debt-free. I hope there's both some helpful resources and a philosophical component for you to chew on there as well, Adam. The next listener question comes from Hako in Utica, New York. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. It's spelled J-A-C-O. Maybe it's Jocko, but I'm going to go with Hako. He asks, I've held my first ever purchase of a rental single-family home for a little over a year. It's located in Holiday, Florida. Though my property was projected to provide a cash-on-cash return of 6%, it only produced 3% because repairs cost more than expected on this 1978 built property. I use a local property manager that's been pretty communicative. I always anticipate reading my monthly email statement from him. Just wondering how to manage costs over time. Signed, Hako. Okay, Hako. And by the way, I own rental single-family homes myself, just about 5 miles from Holiday, Florida, and these areas are just north of Tampa. Well, Hako, only getting 3% rather than a projected 6%, it's actually not a terrible miss. Now, it would be if that were your only revenue source or your only return from an investment. But of course, this 3% cash-on-cash return is one of your 5 profit sources from income property. But suffice to say, one great long-term strategy to keep myriad repair costs down over time, Hako, and it's something that Ken McElroy told me about, and that is charge the tenant for the first $50 in repairs, or maybe charge the tenant for the first $100 of repairs. That way, they're going to think twice before bugging you or bugging your manager. Now, this can have the desired effect of keeping your long-term repair bill down in a few different ways, but yet ensure that you're still serving the tenant. All right, first of all, the first $50 or $100 of repair bill, it's really not that burdensome to most tenants, but yet they will think twice before calling you, or it's calling your manager in this case, Hako, before calling about something ticky-tacky and minor, like the kitchen cabinet doors got a little loose on their hinges again. Now, you want to provide clean, safe, affordable, functional housing. That is a core concept and mission here at GRE. First, this might incentivize the tenant to make a 10 or 15 minute repair themselves so that you never even hear from them. And that also prevents, say, a $75 service call from being made in the first place. Now, if it's a repair that's beyond the tenant's expertise or expectations to take care of themselves, say it's something like a kitchen faucet that just leaks a little, well, okay, you want to see that that's taken care of for them, but if they have to pay the first small portion of repairs themselves, then that incentivizes the tenant to report a number of small things in one batch. All right, well now that makes it more efficient for you or for your property manager's handyman. That makes for fewer service calls, fewer runs to Home Depot, and a real reduction in your repair cost. See, Hako, the work from home movement, that's been good for us as residential real estate investors, but there is one downside to that. A few more tenants spend all day at home, and there are more components that can wear out sooner, or there's just more time that tenants spend at home to notice little things that are amiss. So that's why the time in the real estate market is right to charge the first portion of repair bills to the tenant. That's why this makes sense now. Now, there are a couple caveats around this, Hako. When the tenant first moves in, well, go ahead and give them a week to bring you any findings, and then those things should be taken care of without charging the tenant anything at all, right? I mean, the tenant shouldn't have to inherit any problems. And the other caveat is that your tenant has to be communicative about items in disrepair that could create long-term damage, like a leaky drain, because you don't want that to ruin your subfloor over time. So the short answer on how to lower your long-term repair bills, especially in a work-from-home world, is to have it in the lease that the tenant pays for, say, the first $50 to $100 of repairs. Also, Hako, you may have heard it just 10 episodes ago on episode 449, I discussed 12 ways that you can raise the rent and add value to your property. There's a good bit of related content there to help you keep profitable and get your cash-on-cash return up. Now, plenty of properties, in fact, probably most properties, have exceeded their return projections over the last 3 years, and that is primarily due to rapid appreciation. But see, you don't get the lessons from the wins, you get the lessons from the underperformers, and that's why I wanted to answer your question for everyone's benefit today, Hako. Hako's question was microeconomics. Let's flip it to macroeconomics with this next question from Dave in Atlanta, Georgia. Dave asked this one a while ago. First, here's the remarkable part. On the listener question form in the How Did You Hear About Us section, Dave, you simply wrote, I've been listening to you from the very beginning. Gosh, Dave, this is so supremely appreciated. I know we've got a lot of GRE devotees, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. Dave asks, with the U.S. government $30 trillion in debt, and there's some rounding there, and if inflation is, say, 10% over a few years, doesn't inflation debase the government's debt just like it does ours, taking it from $30 trillion down to $27 trillion in this case? Yeah, that's Dave's question. That's right, Dave, you've 100% got it. I've talked about this in some prior episodes. Since we get to borrow our mortgage loans in the currency that's denominated in the units of the biggest debtor nation in the history of the world, the dollar in the USA, then they want to print. Dave, just like you, if you had $1 million in debt, but you couldn't pay it back right now, and you had the ability to print dollars ad infinitum, then sure, the easiest way for you to pay back your debt is to print your own dollars, just like America is doing. And that is just another benefit of you keeping high debt on your properties. In fact, the true definition of inflation is an expansion of the money supply. It's not the result, which is a decline in purchasing power. Technically, if the same Chipotle burrito cost $10 last year and $11 this year, that's not inflation, that's the result of inflation. So the USA wants inflation for this reason and other reasons. I've said it before, the surest bet in investing is that the dollar is going to continue to decline in purchasing power, and that's exactly why we are debtors rather than savers. Take the sure thing. Thanks for the listenership and thanks for the question, Dave. That's all for listener questions. I encourage you to help yourself out. No one's looking out for you more than you. Amidst historically low U.S. housing supply, GRE Marketplace is where the inventory actually is, and it's the right inventory, the properties that make the best rentals, real estate pays 5 ways style. And the selection changes, of course, based on inventory and other developments, so stay up to date. And if you haven't lately, go ahead and log in there. Our free coaching service is becoming popular as well, and why not? It's like your own GRE concierge, personal one-on-one if you want that. It is all there for you at gremarketplace.com. I'll be here with you to run it back next week. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.